Welcome to Payroll and Personnel Records. All right, fun, interesting stuff to talk about, right, guys? On
Oh
a
yeah.
on a hot afternoon, 80 degrees. I'm still sweating, man, running in here to get this thing started. But
Yep.
welcome to the class. You get one business credit for it. All right, so we are going to look at our objectives first. We will identify various laws that affect employers in their payroll operations. As the employer, we have to stay on our P's and Q's, and that's why I absolutely love a payroll service. They monitor this, they keep everything in check, and all I've got to do is keep up with hours, and it logs me in. I log in, it takes me 2 seconds. Jennifer asked me the other day, she's like, "You've already done payroll?" I'm like, "Yep." Takes me 2 minutes. Log in, type in the hours, and boom. But they keep up with a lot of these laws. They keep up with a lot of the recording. So I highly, highly recommend a payroll service. We'll examine the record keeping requirements of these laws, and then we will describe the employment procedures generally followed in a human resources department. Now, being a small business owner, we're not going to have that HR department. We are HR, and that can get a little hairy at times, to be honest with you. Just wondering if we're doing the right thing, if we're following the correct laws, if we're doing everything in the right order that it needs to be done. So, but there are companies out there that will actually help you manage that as well. I know some of the software that we use in our business, our CRMs, our estimating software. A lot of those software companies will have a general library that will, that you can go and download forms and edit and everything like that. So check with, the companies that you're using for that. Identify the various personnel records used by businesses and the type of information shown in each form, and then identify the payroll register and the employee's earnings record. So we will start off here with the laws that do affect payroll. And so we have the Fair Labor Standards Act, the FLSA. And I know we talked a little bit about this in the wages and um, the wages and can't even remember the name of the title, but we did it last week, for one credit. Um, but we did touch on FLSA there. But this is state's minimum wage and the maximum hour laws, and this pertains a lot to a lot of, if we're using, um, if we're using, high schoolers, family, a lot of that can be affected with this. Then we'll talk about the Federal Insurance Contributions Act, FICA. And then we'll look at income tax withholding laws, which is federal, state, and local, and then the unemployment tax acts that were affected. And yes, my phone continuously goes off just because I have people out in the field still working like you guys do. They don't understand. All right. So, fair employment laws. The Civil Rights Act of 64, Age Discrimination in Employment Act, and then Americans with Disabilities Act. And guys, to be honest with you, why did we even have to have these laws set in place? It just seems very unfair to begin with. But we had to implement these laws so that there was no discrimination. Civil rights. With people of, of color, race, ethnicity, all of that were affected. So that came about in 1964. Age discrimination. I remember my brother when he first got out of college, engineering school. He went to work for a company and he says, man, they were hiring guys my age, but he said they were laying off guys that were like in their mid 50s. And he said they were replacing them with guys like me. And he said, I'm not making as much as them. So, that stuff has always been going around. And like I said, it's unfair and it's a shame that we had to implement acts and laws like this. And then disabilities, people with, minor handicaps or, that are disabled. If they're working for us, you have so many employees, you have to have, accessibility in place where they can get in and out of the office, as well as for your customers, depending on the number of people that are in that facility at one time. Then there's some other federal and state laws that we will actually take a look at. So with Fair Labor Standards Act, your FSLA, the Federal Wage and Hour Law of 1938. So it's been around a while. Look, we're coming up on 100 years in about 13 years. So we're about 87 years into federal wage and hour law. Minimum wage right now, $7.25 per hour, and overtime pay requirements. Equal pay for work provisions. Sets the law for employers involved in interstate commerce or in production of goods or services for interstate commerce, and then establishes the minimum wage rate for covered employees. So, I know none of us in the green industry have people working for $7.25 an hour. I don't actually believe there's any companies that have that, because you see signs hiring at, fast food restaurants or grocery stores or big box stores. They're starting at, $17, $18, even $19 an hour. I've seen signs here recently in the last few weeks at Christmas time where retail stores need extra hands or help over the holidays. They're paying even more during those periods of, high volume sales. And so nobody's doing the $7.25 an hour. It's just ridiculous that it's even that low. But you know what? I feel like sometimes our customers know that the minimum wage is still that, so they're actually thinking we should be paying our employees that and actually charging less for our services. Federal Insurance Contributions Act, FICA, comprised of two taxes: your Federal Old Age and Survivors Trust Fund and the Federal Disability Insurance Trust Fund, that is your OASDI. And then there is the Medicare plan, your HI, Health Insurance Plan. Both taxes paid by employer and employee, and imposes tax on net earnings of the self-employed individuals. We all know how much comes out of our checks when we do payroll. Income tax withholding laws. There's rumors that the new president may, do without the federal income tax. And, we think of what that may do to the economy. I think people have a lot of extra money to spend, and they might want more landscaping and irrigation done. But with federal income tax, levied on earnings of employees is withheld from the paychecks, and the percentage formula or wage bracket chart is used to withhold tax. Now, this is where I think you can get in trouble the quickest with the IRS, is if you are not doing your withholdings correct. Definitely if you're not doing them, period. But we got off, it was only 2 or 3 months. I had downloaded the wrong QuickBooks table when I was doing paychecks then, and the IRS knocked on the door. They're like, you got off on your payroll taxes, and we're here to collect that. And they had everything printed out. I mean, it was straight legit. They introduced themselves, nice individuals, but still nonetheless very intimidating. They came and they got their money. State and local income tax is withheld from the paychecks again, different in each state, and not all states have state income tax. They're making it up on other taxes. Unemployment tax acts. We got 2 pages of this. You got FUTA, which is your Federal Unemployment Tax Act. This is your employer tax. Tax is used to pay state and federal administrative expenses of the unemployment program. Credit is granted against most of the FUTA tax if the employer pays a state unemployment tax. However, guys, this is not used to pay unemployment benefits. We're going to see what actually does, and that's the SUTA. This is basically, the FUTA is actually withheld or, paid by us to basically run the administrative part of the unemployment program. They've got to have people working. They've got to have, secretaries. They've got to have, a pie, or not a pie chart, but they've got to have an organizational chart of all these people. And again, probably too many people working but that's what's used to pay their payroll and all the administrative parts of it. Your SUTA, your State Unemployment Tax Act, mandatory unemployment insurance. For each state, it is different. Social Security Act outlines standards that each state's unemployment compensation law must follow, and it is used to pay unemployment benefits. So this is the money collected that if you had an individual draw on you, this is where the money's going to come from. Now, I know that we have in the past had employees working for us that knew exactly how long to work, when to quit. They'll quit or they'll stop just showing up, and then all of a sudden, guess what happens? You get a letter saying that they are trying to draw unemployment off of you, and you're like, well, they just stopped showing up. Again, it's not that they're going to get paid or it's really going to hurt you if they did, but the fact is filling out all that paperwork and then just knowing that, they're laying around the house drawing that check. Fair employment laws, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, entitled EEO, or Equal Employment Opportunity, prohibits discrimination in hiring, firing, promoting, or compensating based on color, race, religion, national origin, or gender. Now, does it still happen? More than likely so. I would say in some of the smaller organizations, it probably does. But within the unions, they may not exclude or segregate members on the above basis as well. Sexual harassment is also prohibited. And this is the sad thing, that women cannot go to work and be really free of sexual harassment. It's going to happen. It just does. Good friend of mine who is a HR director tells me some horror stories, and the stuff that men are saying to women in the workplace, the things that they are doing, and these are married men, and these are married women. There are just some men out there that are dogs, and I can't believe that they must have not been raised right or didn't have a dad like I did, because that was a no-no. Applies to all employers who engage in an industry affecting commerce and employ 15 or more workers in each of 20 or more weeks in the current or preceding calendar year. So they have to abide by these fair employment laws. The Civil Rights Act of 1991, this was for compensation and punitive damages that must be paid out in cases where discrimination is intentional. So if it happens, you're going to have to pay. If somebody sues you and they find you guilty, it's going to happen. And it's almost like, I really wish, when you had some type of application, don't ask names. Don't ask, the age. I'm more worried about an individual that says, hey, I can run a skid steer. I've got 5 years experience running an excavator. I've got 2 years on a mowing crew with XYZ landscaping. I don't care what color they are, what gender they are, what nationality they are. If they can work and they've got a good resume to prove it to me, that stuff doesn't matter to me.
Question.
Do what?
Question. So on the discrimination, I don't hire women, period. Mm-hmm. Is that discrimination?
Well, now that you've admitted it on camera, yeah, right.
Well, I mean, my wife won't let a woman ride in the truck with me, and I don't blame her.
Yeah, 100%.
And I don't want to either.
Yeah.
So is that right or wrong?
No, I agree with you on that, Chris. My wife's the same way. I mean, Jennifer's the same way. We're getting married in June. Yeah, we're the exact same way. There's there needs to be a line. Now, if you're one in one truck and you're just having one person, yeah, I mean, you're never, ever probably going to get in trouble for that, because more than likely a woman's not even going to apply for the position. And, you're probably out recruiting individuals that you seem like would fit into your organization. Now, if you publicly, advertise for the job, advertise for the position, and, you have some women that apply and one is more qualified than a male that, worked, yeah, she possibly could probably sue you for that. Um, I mean, that's just being honest.
Yeah.
But that's when you actually, publicly put it out there and, do the interviews. But, is your wife the president of the company?
No, I am.
You are. So I,
Well, basically, yes, yeah.
yeah, I would kind of put, that's what we're in the process of doing. When we get married, she's going to be the president of the actual company. For one, because we want to go after some of the,
Yeah.
WBE or whatever type work that there is, and just, be able to have that. I'm also, you know, retired military, disabled veteran, 90% VA, 70% Army. So that kind of would qualify us for some other jobs too, because she would actually have me working for her.
She's a
Um,
minority, per se.
yeah, yep. But I, when it comes to that, I wholeheartedly agree. There would never be a female riding the truck with me, and we have those policies, at school. Um, I'm never going to ride with a female professor to a conference or anything like that. If it was a group of us, 5 or 6 people, taking,
Different story.
different story, but the no single rides or anything like that. 100% agree. And if your wife's in the business with you and hiring it, you know, you're meeting diversity right there. If your wife's a part of the business as well, and she's the one doing the hiring and firing, that's what I would have
Yeah.
her in place to do that. So
Yeah.
that's a woman not hiring a woman. So,
Right.
but I would, that's how we act. We don't publicly put stuff out there on the internet. I can tell my guys, hey, I need somebody else, and they go after their friends, or their friends
Right.
see them putting stuff on Snapchat and they're the ones actually
Yeah.
calling. So
I had ladies working for me before, but they would pull weeds on properties with their own stuff.
yeah, you were
They
using
would
them as a
show up in their
subcontractor.
own vehicle, do their own thing. When they through, they tell me the hours, I pay them, and that's the end of it.
Yeah, 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 perfect way to do it. Perfect way to
Yeah.
do it. And that is a true 1099 contractor. They're using their own equipment, working on their own time. You give
Yep.
them a list of properties that needs to be done and make it happen.
Yep.
So good deal. With age discrimination in Employment Act, the ADAA, Age Discrimination in Employment Act of 1967 states that employers, employment agencies, and labor unions cannot use age to discriminate in hiring, firing, or promoting. Applies to employers engaged in interstate commerce with 20 more workers. Provides protection to workers over 40 years old with a few key exceptions. Exception is executives 65 years or older who have held high policy making positions during 2-year period to retirement and are entitled to an annual retirement benefit of at least 44,000. Such employees can be forcibly retired. Places on the employer to keep accurate personnel and payroll records. So you have to detail all of this. But very few people are going to work in this industry unless they own the industry, into their 60s or 70s. I mean, it's just not going to happen. Dad did. Dad passed away at 75. He worked, until he was 74, actually. Um, and then just a few months later passed. I mean, he was always on a job site or doing something because he wanted to get out of the house, battling the cancer. But you're not going to find, people like that today that at least don't have a financial tie to the company. If they're an hourly employee or whatever, they're going to retire. Or they're going to move on to something else. Now, um, with this, I wanted to say what else. Um, we've used employment agencies, especially traveling, doing some of these jobs. We're having to put out 2 tractor and trailer loads of sod, and those things pull up at 2 o'clock. We would use an employment agency that will send out, 10 people. We just needed people slinging sod. But we've had to send some of those people back because they were, elderly people that did not need to be doing that type of work. And so if they weren't keeping up with the pace, we'd call the agency and they'd send somebody else out. And there was times it was a rotating basis until we got people that we needed to make it happen. But nonetheless, you can't fire them because they're getting too old. Now, the Army.
My main guy is 66 years old.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember you saying that, and he can work circles around these 21-year-olds.
Yes.
Yep. It's different generation.
Yep. He's got a job until he dies.
Yeah.
He's not going to leave. He's going to stay here until he can't go anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's got it. I mean, I'm going to pay him till he can't go.
Yeah.
Period.
True. Well, I've seen the Army force people out, with age. Unless they're a medical officer, they let some of those guys in even later in life, finishing school, or, they're 45 years old and feel a need to serve. They'll let them come in if they're a physician or, nurse or things like that. And they can work on up to the regular retirement rate. Federal Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Reconciliation Act of 1996 requires employers to report information on all new hires within 20 days of hire to state agency. Includes name, address, social security number. Submitting a copy of a W-4 suffices in many states. Records are coordinated through Federal Office of Child Support Enforcement, the OCSE. Fines up to $25 per new hire levied for failure to report. And a few states now require same information for independent contractors. And I can see why, because so many people are skipping out on their child support. And it's used to help enforce these child support obligations. Now, with this, that's why I like using a payroll system. We enter the name, address, social security number. We give them a W-4 that they fill out. We have a contact sheet that we fill out. And all that is, stored in the payroll system. It's uploaded, with their banking information and stuff. So it all works out to the best for us having this payroll service. Now, there are employees who know exactly when you're going to get that child support letter. They know it to the date. You hire somebody and you're like, man, yeah, this guy is working out. They're going to be with us a while. They work hard. Really glad I found them. And then all of a sudden, they just disappear. You don't know what's up. And even back in the day when we were doing handwritten checks, we'd have people with, a couple checks stacked up. Like, well, they just disappeared. You can mail it. You get the thing back in the mail saying, not here. But what it is, they knew that the child support people were looking for them. And they know about the time, how long it takes for all that to catch up. We hired an individual and worked out okay. He's, until he put DEF fluid in my diesel truck in the diesel tank instead of in the reservoir with it where it needed to go. We fired him for that. And, it was a day or two later that I got 4 different child support letters from him, all in the state of Florida. He had children with 4 different women that were seeking child support payments from him. The state of Florida was ready to start charging me the child support and me go after him. Like, that ain't happening. He's no longer working here. I had to find him, and I found out where he was working and sent Florida, called them up and said, hey, he is working for this landscape company. Here's their address. Here's the owner's phone number. He is working with them 100%. That dude kind of got mad at me, and I'm like, look, it's not my deal. Not my deal. He's working for you now. And this guy was paying him cash under the table, so he didn't even want to have to deal with, the payroll, or not the payroll, but deducting it from payroll, the child support.
He was headed down the wrong road on that deal.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Bad, bad, bad.
Very bad. Very bad. Immigration Reform and Control Act of 1986, your IRCA. This is a law that bars hiring and retaining aliens unauthorized to work in the United States. Employers have to complete Form I-9, Employment Eligibility Verification. Some do, some states require it, some don't. Employers can photocopy the I-9 documents. However, if done, photocopying should apply to all new employees. Section 1 of the form should be signed by the employee no later than the first day of employment. And Section 2 must be signed by the employer within 3 business days of the employee's first day of employment. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services may audit and levy civil penalties for hiring, recruiting, or referring violations. And E-Verify is a government-run system that allows employers to check employment eligibility of new hires by cross-matching Form I-9 information with databases of the Social Security Administration and Department of Homeland Security. And federal contracts contain E-Verify clauses for all new employees and mandatory in 20 states for some or all employees. So only 20 out of the 50 does require the E-Verify. With Family and Medical Leave Act, FMLA of 1993, covers employers with 50 or more employees within 75-mile radius for at least 20 weeks in the current or preceding calendar year. Employee guaranteed 12 weeks of unpaid leave for childbirth, adoption, serious illness of the employee or the employee's child, spouse, or parent. Leave may be used all at once or at separate times within 12 months of qualifying event. An employer must continue health care coverage and guarantee right to return to same job or comparable position. Now, we have a situation at the college where one of my instructors is getting ready to go through a second round of chemo. Yeah, he did chemo, did surgery, done radiation, everything was cool. Well, the cancer's come back. So he's had to put in for Family and Medical Leave Act. And we'll have to use these days. He told me a couple of days ago, he said, Eric, this new round of chemo that I'm going to take, they told me he's going to knock me out. So he's going to be kind of under the weather, be working from home. But he did have to fill out this Family and Medical Leave Act just for protection, which guarantees that he can come back. Federal tax credits now available for employers that provide paid family medical leave to their employers up to the employees up to 12 weeks. So you may decide to do that. We had a guy on the first class that we did this year. He had a young man who was in the Coast Guard, and now that they're part of U.S. Homeland Security, and he said this was like right after 9/11. And he said this young man got activated for the Coast Guard to go pull security details, and said he was gone for over a year. He said, Eric, I paid this kid his salary the whole time he was gone. He said, I didn't have to, but he said all I had to do was guarantee that he was able to come back. But he went ahead and paid the service member his full salary while he was drawing a paycheck from Uncle Sam. FMLA expanded to include up to 12 weeks when family members is on active duty, or up to 26 weeks for line of duty, injury, or illness. Employers can exempt employees in specific situations, and some states have implemented paid family leave plans. So I think it's a good thing. It is a benefit that's going to attract some people, especially they know, hey, we're planning on having children. That they can actually stay home and help mom with the newborn baby. Uniform Services Employment and Reemployment Rights of Act, USERRA, of 1994, and I had to use this at the college, and I'll explain that. But this is basically the right to military personnel to take leaves of absence from their civilian jobs for active military service and to return with accrued seniority. They can't bust you down. Reinstatement must be to the employee's original position or its equivalent, except for the dishonorably discharged. So if you go over there and do something very, very wrong and military dishonorably discharge you, you're not guaranteed to go back to your current civilian job. This happened back in the first Gulf War. And that's why it was enacted in 1994. So, 91, 92, when the wars like that were going on, these guys got activated, they got recalled, and then when they come home, they did not have their civilian jobs waiting for them. Return must be granted within 2 weeks of the job request, and health benefits must be started without any waiting period. And guys, I just believe that, if a young man or a young woman wants to serve this country, they need to know that if they get called up, they're not going to lose their job, that they'll have the insurance when they return to help raise their families. And so I did have a situation at the college where I had to use this act. Before I retired from the Army Reserves, the Army's like, hey, we want you to go to Fort Bragg. We want you to recert on your medical training and keep your medic license in case you decide to come back. And I said, all right. And, the Army offered me a civilian job as an instructor at the medic training program down there. Almost took it, but I loved the green industry so much. I was like, I can't do it. But nonetheless, got recerted and went ahead and retired. But when I got my orders to report to the schoolhouse, I took it to my dean, who actually took the orders and balled it up and then proceeded to use it as a piece of toilet paper and reach around and pretend he was wiping. And he threw them on the ground and stepped on them and said, look, you ain't going. I need you here. And I was like, Dean, do you really want me to pursue this? I said, you have to let me go. He said, you are not going. I don't care what. I was like, okay. I was like, I need to make a phone call. I made a phone call. Within a couple hours, they had 2 attorneys there saying, Mr. Jones has every right to attend this training. He has orders for it. So, and nonetheless, he was let go. It's about less than a week because a lot of other things surfaced from him, and that was kind of the icing on the cake. The Affordable Care Act, ACA of 2010, one of 2, consists of 2 pieces of legislation. Note, in the 2017 legislation, requiring coverage for individuals and dependents was repealed. As a result, the ACA faces an uncertain future. Health Care and Education Reconciliation Act, and then the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. So basically, we're talking about Obamacare here. Designed to expand health insurance coverage while increasing benefits and lowering costs. Now, what I don't understand is, people do need insurance, and it needs to be affordable, and it needs to be something that people can pay, and it needs to be something that's worth having. As a retiree of the military, I pay $25 a month to keep Army insurance for life, $25. And so I'm like, why can't, that section of the federal government do that? Why can't they do it for everybody else? Healthcare cost has gone absolutely insane. And what health insurance packages cost for a family of 4 is absolutely ridiculous. The employee may have theirs covered, but if they add their spouse and then their children to the plan, they're paying an arm and a leg. With the Affordable Care Act, page 2 of it, state-based health insurance exchanges established for those who do not have employer-provided coverage or ineligible for public programs like Medicaid. Applicable large employers with 50-plus full-time employees are required to report on Form 1095-C, a return with the IRS and information statement to each full-time employee. Small employers, less than 50 employees, can purchase affordable insurance through the Small Business Health Options Program and may also receive a tax credit if pay is at least 50% of cost for premiums for single coverage. We had a guy in the class down in Mooresville, pays health insurance for his team and for their family members. He said it cost him about $80,000 a year. He only has like 8 employees, so he's paying about $10,000 a year per employee to have health insurance. But he says, guys, I have employees that's been with me 15 plus years. I said none less than 10. Like, this is a package deal that he's offering them. And he says, I don't have a problem, having people. I got people wanting to work with me all the time just because of the benefits that we do provide. Other state laws, workers' compensation. Guys, we have to have it. You're licensed contractors. And so you've got to have workers' comp and general liability to get your bond, which allows you to purchase your license. And that's why you're here getting your continued ed, is to renew your license. But workers' compensation, that is a benefit to the employee. And I tell them all the time, like, guys, if you get hurt, you're going to have your health, the injury cost is going to be paid for by workers' comp. Once you return or get out of the hospital, ER, or whatever, and you have to have a few days or a few weeks off, you're going to get compensated for those days. Now, it might not be exactly what you were making. If you're making $20, you might get, $16 an hour. It's based on what you were doing and how much you were paying. And so it is a percentage of it, because they figure you're not having wear and tear on your car. You're not having to pay gas to get to work. So they can give you just a little bit less. But the law protects employees and their dependents against loss due to work-related injury, illness, or death. Most states require employers to pay employees premiums. The contribution to a state compensation insurance fund can self-insure if state approved. Company bears all the risk itself. And then purchase of workers' compensation insurance from a private insurance company authorized by the state. State benefit laws. 5 states have established laws requiring employers to provide disability benefits. This applies even if the disability, illness, or disease did not arise due to employment. So that's something new. I mean, think about that. Laws requiring employers to provide disability benefits, even if the disease, illness, or injury did not occur at work. They still got to pay it. Human resource and payroll accounting systems. Again, I can't stress enough the use of a payroll system. We use ADP. Critical that a business keeps human resources and payroll records that meet federal and state law requirements. And the payroll department performs accounting functions and can be under direct control of chief financial officer, although the trend is to place it under the direction of a human resource department. We got to have an application for employment. We have to have one for each employee. That's part of the package. The application for employment should be completed by the person seeking employment. Pre-hiring requires or inquiries can include questions on gender, national origin, criminal background, only if there is a bona fide occupational reason. Background checks must be in compliance with the Fair Credit Reporting Act, FCRA. And then aptitude and psychological testing are only lawful if results can be related to the job performance. And then employers should consult state law regarding drug testing. All right. Safeguards to prevent lawsuits include accepting applications only online. Have it where, and then it'll be stored in a database. Have person not involved in the interviews process review applications, and use applicant screening software. Some states now require a formal job offer to be extended before probing salary or benefit histories of applicants in an effort to ensure pay equality. So you've got to offer them a job and then discuss what it is that you're going to pay. And then applications must be kept for 1 year. Reference inquiry conducted before employment. Due to the amount of litigation in this area, respondents should only verify facts and not offer subjective information. So, but if somebody calls you and says, hey, Joe used to work for you, what's your thoughts on him? No comment. Well, what do you think people are going to think when you say no comment? That's pretty much telling them, man, this dude ain't worth hiring. Don't hire him. Prospective employer may require an applicant to sign employment reference release, and then some states have passed laws providing protection from liability to employers who want to provide references. Reference inquiry conducted before employment. Due to the amount of litigation in this area, should only via fair errors and not subjective, and this is a repeat. My apologies for that. Employee history record contains performance evaluations, compensation adjustments, disciplinary issues, and performance appraisals. Now, I am a strong believer of this, especially with the young guys that are coming into the green industry. They ask for a raise. If you're doing performance appraisals, if it's once a month, sit down, talk with them, hey, man, everything's going good. I'd like for you to pick up the pace here. I don't appreciate you not wearing the uniform. We've marked that. This is in your performance review. And when they come time to pitch a fit because they're not getting a dollar raise, you've got all this information that you're keeping on record. The employee must have access to their file, and then termination of employee may be at will or for good cause only, depending on the situation. Whether the system is paper or computer-based or records in the cloud, it is advantageous to have 4 separate sets of records for each employee. Their personnel file, basic information, name, address, etc. Payroll file, salary and benefits. Medical file, insurance and private medical data. And then the I-9 file, copies of the forms and the appropriate documents. Personnel files are the property of the employer. Employees may have the right to view and receive a copy of their own files, and some documents are considered confidential, and employers should not allow employees to view anything that would be considered an invasion of privacy. Payroll accounting system. Many small to mid-sized businesses hire a payroll company to do their processing. This is an independent company responsible for compliance, reduces risk of unpaid payroll taxes by hiring only bonded providers, disallowing the provider the ability to sign tax returns, disallowing tax correspondent to be sent to provider, and then requesting regular IRS transcripts of company accounts. And for our conclusion, now that the lesson has ended, you should have learned how to identify the various laws that affect employers and their payroll operations, examine the record-keeping requirements of these laws, and then describe the employment procedures generally founded in a human resources department, and then identify the various personnel records used by business and the type of information shown on each form. And just like that, we have gone through payroll and personnel records. I'm going to go ahead and stop the share. Does anybody have any comments, questions, or concern?
I do it, but not about payroll.
Okay.
You remember a couple of weeks ago we was talking about the mold on the crepe myrtle?
Yeah.
I had a customer call me that's got it, and I told him ain't nothing you do but pressure wash it off.
Yeah.
But she said that she read something about the bugs were doing something, and it's the crepe myrtles they want trimmed every year. The other crepe myrtles in their yard that we don't trim
don't
are
have
fine.
It.
Yeah. And I said, as long as you keep trimming them, you're weakening them, and it's the stuff that happens.
Yeah.
So, is there anything that I can spray on it?
Well, what it is, you're getting the sooty mold from the honeydew that's produced by the aphids.
Right.
When we cut back crepe myrtles, the first thing it's going to do is send out this flush of growth.
Right.
And that flush of growth attracts the crepe myrtles. Attracts the aphids to the crepe myrtles because of that young herbaceous food source. So you cut them back, they're going to sprout out all these sprouts, and the aphids love that fresh herbaceous food. They release their honeydew, which then turns to that black powdery mildew stuff all over the crepe myrtles. And then you have an issue with ants as well because they want the honeydew.
Yeah.
So, you could spray it off. What it is talk her into not cutting them back. And then also,
she's decided that.
She's decided that.
Yeah.
And is it out in the yard with like a tree ring around it? So
in between two driveways.
Okay. So there's really no turf grass around it?
Because they thought it was theirs. And then when that neighbor sold, they realized that the property line is on the other side of the trees, that the trees were theirs.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So they've been trimmed for years.
Yeah.
He wanted us to keep trimming them because they've always been trimmed. I said, but they're trees. They're not bushes.
Yeah.
So this is what's happening.
They're all knotted up too, aren't they?
Below the knot.
You cut below the knot.
Can't stand them knots.
I know.
But once she says don't do it, I'll trim and make one shoot out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So
and then let it go.
True.
But spraying the aphids, is there any? I mean, is it any use in spraying them?
I mean,
Is it good for
yeah.
them or not?
Well,
Some
it,
people are saying yes because she's reading this stuff online, so you're getting
yeah.
all kinds of stuff.
I mean, I would spray it. I think you're safe to go ahead and do it. And here's the thing: you probably just put out fertility apps on this property too, didn't you? Did they get any like fertilized near them?
Yes, well, not really, not there.
Okay.
It just
Um,
it other side of the driveway.
Gotcha. Because aphids are attracted to nitrogen too, and so you get these high instances of nitrogen in the soil is going to be at leaf unfold,
Right.
also at leaf drop. But what else is going on at that time? Like, we're out fertilizing yards, and so
Yeah.
you naturally got, um, you know, iron nitrogen. Sorry, you got the nitrogen already happening with leaf unfold, and then we're putting nitrogen out for our lawn care program, and boom, the aphids are just there. They've got to have the nitrogen to live. So
So, do I spray it with a bipenthren or a horticultural oil, or do nothing?
both could work. And I do like the idea of the pressure washer, to get rid of that
Yeah.
city mold. And that'll
But is
help
that
knock the aphids off too. Do what?
is the sooty mold hurting anything?
No,
Just
it
makes
can't
everything
kill it.
really dirty. Makes
Yeah,
Yeah.
everything really dirty. It doesn't really hurt the plant, but
no,
it makes it look terrible, and it's not going to have the vigor. But I'll tell you, what we found is we do 4 applications of dormant oil. We do 2 before the end of December, and then we do
Uh-huh.
2 in February. And the dormant oil really does. If you stay on it and you do it, it will really take care of not only aphids but a tremendous amount of other insects. And you know what? If that stuff drifts or whatever, it's not a pesticide.
yeah,
Right. It's
I mean,
just
so it's
oil.
very safe when you're talking about between 2 driveways and you got, you know, close proximity to cars and stuff like that. I mean,
Yeah.
the horticultural oil, you have to be careful though, because if it's going to get, say, above 80 degrees and hot, then you can
It'll
burn
burn.
some foliage with it. But
yeah,
really, even when we were having a problem with it when I was in the maintenance business, we were actually using horticultural oil on the bark of the tree to
Right.
not on the leaves, but on the bark of the tree when we were having some aphid issues. And it does a wonderful job because it suffocates them.
yeah,
Yeah.
It doesn't smell. But
There's no foliage on it right now.
yeah, that's right. I mean, that actually is not a bad thing to do right now. That's really when you start because you're trying to kill the eggs before they hatch.
Right. Now, do you
Uh,
soak it to a drip and run down, or you just spray a mist over all of it?
you know, well, I'm gonna tell you what we do, but I've seen some other people figure out something else. But what we do is we have those steel backpack blowers that have
Yeah.
the tank on the back,
Yeah.
and we just go through and we hit all the plants with horticultural oil. We hit them all. The only one that I stay away from is if the Japanese beetle, Japanese maple's already flushed out with red foliage, then you got to be careful with them because it'll actually burn some
Burn.
of that if it gets hot, sunshiny. But we take those blowers and we go out and we wrap them up, and it reduced our chemical uses for pest control by over 40% over a 5-year period.
Oh,
wow,
wow.
I mean, but it takes 4 applications. You really got to stay on it. You got to do 2. You got to do
yeah,
2 because what you're doing is you're basically killing the eggs. So
How
then
far apart?
we about 4 weeks. We do one in November. Would do one in December. You got to pick the day because it can't be freezing, and read the directions on it. But and then we do one in January, end of January, one in February most of the time. This year we just did one 2 weeks ago because of the crazy weather we had.
Right.
We just did so we were into March, but horticultural oil, ultrafine horticultural oil is a magnificent thing. Should be used more by people instead of less and less pesticides. And I'm not negative on pesticides. I'm just saying your PPE's not there. You can send out employees with it if the conditions are right. If it drifts into something else, it's not going to hurt anything. I
Right.
mean, it's just a lot of Not that you have any employees. I'm just saying for me, I could send horticultural oil out with an employee and a blower, and it didn't matter what variety plant it was. They could go out there and give some type of treatment that would help. And a lot of times what you don't see is you go look in those hollies that they got around their foundation and pull them back, and they've been trimmed on the top so often. You look inside and it doesn't have nothing but the foliage, 3-4 inches of foliage on the end. But you look in there and see what you see. You'll see a whole lot of critters. So what we do is we'll take that blower and we'll stick it in that shrub, and we'll just light it up. And then if you go back and look at properties we did that on for 3 years, there ain't no bugs in those on that stuff. It's gone.
Now, do I pressure wash this before I do that?
You don't have to power wash it now because they're not on it. I would do the dormant oil now. Now, once you start seeing signs of city mold because you didn't get them all, and you're not going to get them all.
It's one.
You still got city mold on there from last year?
She said it was from just now. She started noticing it.
Yeah, then
from last year, and she just read something and saw it.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, typically, if it's bad, I would power wash it. I just use a wide angle, high volume water. You don't need to power wash it like trying to get bird poop off the car. But and really, if you look, a lot of people just use a strong water hose to do it, but that doesn't really work very well.
Right.
But like y'all have all said, it's the new foliage. That's a no-no. That they're going to be there. It doesn't matter if you do everything I'm telling you. They'll come from other places to it. What I found with aphids is you got to treat the whole property. You can't just treat the crepe myrtle. You got to treat the hollies. You got to treat the camellias. You got to treat whatever they got with that dormant oil, so that you can get the insect pressure down. Because you could cure every one of them that's on that crepe myrtle, and then in 2 or 3 weeks they're going to come from that other holly that hadn't been treated, and they're going to come right to it.
Yeah. So what do you in that blower? How much do you mix into it? I got a 2 gallon, I think it is.
I typically we're 1.5 ounces of dormant oil, ultrafine dormant oil per gallon. Okay. It's not that much, and then depending on how bad they are, if you don't have a blower type deal, and look, I've seen people take their pump up backpack sprayer, and this is. I don't know. I'm not advocating this, but they've taken a pump up backpack sprayer and they've drilled a hole in their sprayer tube, and they have their backpack sprayer on a little cart, and they are pulling it around, and at that one location they're doing that so they don't have to buy that steel blower. But I was just
curious.
I mean, I would, if you have that blower, then that is the absolute. That does a bang up job. Now, I haven't had great luck with bifenthrin on aphids.
Right.
Much as, believe it or not, I mean, orthene is still a solid performer. And now that everybody's not using it, I get good control. If I start seeing them, I'll spray that first.
Right. So I should probably just spray it regardless and not worry about the mold on the tree right now.
Yeah, and if you get them, then the mold will go away with a couple of rainfalls, believe it or not.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. It's washing off. It's just like Eric said, it's really the secretion from the aphid that's creating that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think sometimes
that'll disappear.
That's right. I think sometimes what I saw a lot is people overthought it. They just wanted to go get a chemical to kill it, but really, some cultural controls like dormant oil really do a bang up job, and then that's something that you can send somebody out with, or you can spray without a reentry.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you guys keep up on a lot of these pesticides, but some of this stuff's getting ready to get crazy. They're going to say that if we spray something at somebody's house, we're going to have to post it, and they're not going to be able to go outside for a period of time. Well, who's going to have you spray something at their house?
I'll quit doing it before that happens.
Some of that stuff's crazy. It's already hit our nursery industry where they basically doubled the reentry time. So instead of it being a 12-hour or 48-hour reentry, they're saying it's going to have to be a 72-hour. Well, we try to spray on Friday evening. We don't work on Saturday most of the time at the nursery so that the guys can come back to work on Monday. Now they're going to make it so we're going to have to stay out of that area a working day. And then, good gracious, I mean, if you need to go sell a plant out of that area, you can't even sell it.
No,
crazy.
Yeah.
Sorry, I jumped in like that.
No, I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Well, any other questions, comments, or concerns?
I think we're good.
All right. Now, what y'all gonna do? Go back to work?
I am.
Get ready for church.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
right.
yeah,
It
church is
is.
tonight. Oh,
Yeah,
might be able to work too
that's
long
right.
then.
I done loaded up for tomorrow already, so I'm good to go.
All right. Well, gentlemen, I appreciate it. I'm working on this proof of attendance right now. I'll send it over here in a few.
Sounds
Thanks,
great.
sir.
Thanks, Eric.
All right. Thanks, guys. See y'all.
Sir.
Thank you.
See you. Bye.